Yesu. Some of the things I'm hearing definitely might have come from my Vice Chancellor. Prof, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here. I have a testimony to share. My testimony is not to attract your sympathy, but for us to know that God has something for us in this meeting. When Prof called me to be part of this conference, I knew that I would be far away in Techiman to address a conference. So I should have said, Prof, I'm sorry. But he's my former Vice Chancellor. And once a Vice Chancellor, always a Vice Chancellor. And so I said, yes, sir. Yesterday around 4, thereabout, I was still at Techiman, trying to rush from Techiman through Kumasi to Accra to be here. Now, the effort to just rush through, I was nearly crushed by a truck. That's why I said, I'm not saying this for your sympathy. But I'm asking myself why, Lord, I've been able to make this. And the affirmation I have is this meeting is serving like the prophetic utterance that came at the beginning of this morning session on the seed. That God has something for us. So for some of us, to be part of this conference is just the doing of the Lord. Do you understand? And so don't take anything for granted. So, sir, I'm so grateful to be part of this. And I thank the good Lord for the mighty deliverance that he has given to me. Unleashing, and my friends who have the slides, if you can feature the slides more. Unleashing the transformative power of the child worker. Prof, this is what I'll be doing. I will give biblical basis of the teaching ministry, or what we call Christian education. What it means is this ministry is a branch of Christian education or the teaching ministry. And so I'll touch on theology of children ministry. Then we will try to identify those we are calling child workers. So we'll do identification of the child worker. Then what we are calling transformative power of child workers. I'll give historical and theological antecedent. Some people have gone ahead of us, and so we will track their steps. Now, I will pick a particular man called Robert Riggs. Some time ago, I was teaching Christian education in the Pentecost theological seminary, and you were in my class then, eh? So some of them may know the story of Robert Riggs. I will tell the story again. If I still have time, I'll talk about Horace Bushnell, else we will skip him. Then I'll touch briefly on what we call public theology of the early fathers of Sunday school. Then moving towards the transformative power of the child worker. Where do we go for the strength? Now, let me introduce this subject in this way. Transformative power of the child worker refers to the potentials of those who work among children and young people to facilitate commitment to Christian faith values in the children and young people in order to bring positive change in themselves, in the children, their communities, churches, and their world at large. Now, this is normally what teachers will do. Difficult thing, but let me explain to you. That's why you shouldn't miss lectures. When I have said this, if somebody is not in class, you may read this 3 times. You may not be sure of what I'm trying to say. But what I've said in that statement is the child worker is a facilitator. It means the child worker is a midwife. The child worker is what? Midwife. You are into midwifery. You are not pregnant. You don't have the baby in your womb. That child sitting in front of you, that young person, is pregnant. And you, as the child worker, you are facilitating a process to bring out what is already existing in the child, that the child is able to produce what he or she is supposed to produce. Now that process is what we are talking about, how the child worker must function as a midwife, as a facilitator. So that statement there, that's all that I'm trying to say. Are you okay? So I'm saying you are a midwife and you must facilitate delivery of babies, ideas, wisdom, power, gifts that exist in children. Are we together? Now, I have said earlier on that children ministry is a branch of Christian education ministry, or what we call the teaching ministry. And the teaching ministry of the church is a divine mandate. It's not like one chairman or apostle woke up one morning and said, let's have children ministry. It is a divine call. It is a divine mandate, something that Bible or the Lord wants us to do. Now, if you read Exodus 16, verse 32 and up to 36, you realize that when the Lord fed his people with manna, it is not Moses who ordered. It is God who instructed that Moses should pick pieces of the manna, take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out. So God is the one who instructed preservation of manna for the next generation, for teaching, for education. So as far back as the Old Testament experience, Exodus, God instructed pieces of the manna to be kept to educate the unborn generations, to teach those who will come after us must know the story about the manna. Then when they cross the river, Joshua 4, 2-3, again it is God who instructed that they should pick stones from the bed of the river and build a monument. Choose, when the nation, this is instruction to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. And the instruction was, build a memorial, and one day when your children ask you, what is this? Then you use that to educate, to teach. So you go to Joshua and instruction was given. You find that in Deuteronomy 4, 9, 7, and 9 to 10, and many more, that instructions were given to parents to teach. The Great Commission, our Lord Jesus instructed us to teach. Now, Paul tells us a wonderful story. There's something Paul called genuine faith. Genuine faith. He was talking about Timothy. And this is Paul. When I recall to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwell first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded is also in you. What it means is that Timothy had a genuine faith, but Paul is saying there had been an effort, a facilitation. Somebody transfer the faith from your grandmother, and that genuine faith moved from your grandmother to your mother, and then it reached you. Do you understand? Now that process will not just happen if there was not somebody who was consciously making sure that the faith moves from grandmother to mother to the son. So you find more of such in scripture. Now, for those of us in Christian education, I don't want to try to give a definition, but there are concepts that we use to explain the teaching ministry, what we all do. And one is Christian information. That when you want to do what Lois Eunice have done, number one, you need Christian information. And Christian information is the whole Bible, New Testament, Old Testament, history, traditions, contemporary issues. You put all of them together as Christian information. Now let me tell a story and let me find out how many of you have heard that story before. They said that when Noah built the ark, some people eased themselves into the ark. Then God caused some skin diseases and somebody fell into it. He washed himself and he was fine. So all the people in the town threw themselves into their own feces, and that's how they cleaned the ark. How many of you have ever heard this story? How many? Oh, look at them. How many of you have ever told this story? How many of you have ever told that story? How many of you have done it before? How many of you have ever read this story from the Bible? You've read that? That story is from Quran. It's a Quranic story. It's not in the Bible. Now, when we talk about using Christian information, there are things we do in church, especially Sunday school children. They have nothing to do with the Christian faith. So, if you really, really want to nurture faith, you use the Christian information, the full Bible. And then Church of Pentecost, the history of this church is part of your Christian information. The traditions, music, all the architecture, all the leadership, your constitution, materials that have been introduced to us, they all come into our traditions. Contemporary issues. Put all of them together. That is your story. That is your history. But you must be very careful that you are fair and right, faithful to your own information. Please don't go to Sunday school and tell that story of people easing themselves in the Noah's Ark. It's nowhere in the Bible. You raise your hand that you've read it before. I'll come and check the kind of Bible you are using. So, if you are into teaching ministry, number one, the Christian information. Number two, you are into formation. You use the Christian information to form, to build up. And you build up two things: faithful discipleship or disciples and good citizens. So your formation, and this is where many people are failing. If you do Christian education and you stop at faithful disciples, you have not been fair. You need faithful disciples, but the faithful disciples in church must equally be good citizens. And in the process, you are looking for transformation. And the transformation is individual transformation that leads to community transformation, and it is ongoing effort. So there's reformation. So in Christian education, we play with concept, Christian information that bring formation, that lead us into transformation, which keeps going, and that is the reformation. But that is not what morning. So let me skip some of these things. But maybe, who knows, if in future we will need to do more in the area of Christian education, we will help. But let me go to history. And yes. I brought in the Christian education bit because we are into that domain. But that is not our focus for this session. Beloved, if you want to facilitate transformation in any area of the church, your theology is your Christian understanding, must be right. If you do anything, whether church architecture, church finance, you see, there was a time that the church needed money. And because the church needed money, and not your church, Church of Pentecost, but another church, they built a theology that come to church and give money. Those days they were dealing with coins. Now, as soon as your money drops into the offering bowl and it makes the sound konkrong, your mother, your father, your grandfather, grandmother, who died so many years, as soon as you give offering, their souls will move straight from hell and they'll go to heaven. How many of you have heard this before? You haven't heard this story before. That is why people like Martin Luther King wrote, not Martin Luther, but Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a Baptist minister in the U.S. But Martin Luther, who initiated the Reformation, if you have Catholic friends, still keep them. Don't fight them. But there was a time, that was what the Catholic Church was teaching. As if to say, one could buy your salvation. You can pay to be in heaven. You can pay for your mother. This was teaching in the church. Truly, truly. You see, so if you look at Christian history, we've made so many mistakes. Churches, don't ask for Church of Pentecost, we've never made mistakes. Please. Don't talk like that. Don't say amen. We are still human beings, so there are small mistakes. The Catholic Church made several of such mistakes. Asking people, bring offering, and you can take people from hell into heaven. Now that is theology, but misleading theology. Now, one area you can push misleading theology easily or knowingly is when we are dealing with children, because they don't talk back. If you go to church and have people like Prof. Ellis sitting in church and you are teaching some funny things, he may decide not to talk, but after church, pull your coat. Reverend, you said this, I want to hear you the second time. You see? So there are critical minds at a certain level, they won't swallow anything. But as for these children, if you tell them anything, unless they go home and ask their parents, they'll swallow. But bring back that slide. Please, let me rush through. Each one of them can qualify for a whole conference team. What is here? Theology of children ministry. What is our Christian understanding? If you don't like the concept theology. Number one is children. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I'm just raising them, maybe for future conversations. Children, number one, are gifts from God. Even if they were born out of whatever, even if their conception was accidental, children are still gifts from God. Do you understand? Even if their mothers, normally firstborn children, their mothers try a lot to throw them somewhere and they weren't successful. So many firstborn children are accidental. Do you understand? Yes, especially those outside, proper marriages and all that. The mother was in school somewhere, became pregnant. He tried her abortion, didn't succeed. But even if your parents have told you before, you are try, you are still a gift of God. So the mere fact that abortion did not succeed and therefore you were born doesn't mean you are an accident. Children are gifts from God too. They are loved by God. Look at the Jesus example. Even when his disciples were blocking the children, Jesus allowed them to come. He's yesterday, today, forever. He loved them yesterday and he still loves them. So children are you can take my D and loved by God. yesterday, today. So then the Holy Spirit can dwell in them. The Holy Spirit that our General Secretary mentioned. If you want to understand, children can be used by God. And I have Miriam in mind. When her brother, the king wanted to kill him, and far away, that little girl was taking care of her brother, who became the Moses who brought deliverance. So that girl, little girl, Sunday school girl, became an instrument of God. You remember Samuel when he was in the temple, and even when the then prophet was not hearing from God, little Samuel was hearing God. Of course, he made mistake. He wasn't sure where the call was coming from, so he jumped here, but eventually he was able to discern the direction God was giving. If we can still stay there, sure. Now, there's another child who gave his lunch to Jesus, that Jesus used to feed several people. You remember? Now, when we tell the story, we mention the bigger side, the adult side. But some children will never give you their lunch. They will cry. We are not told that that child cried. We only heard the disciples say, oh, there's a little boy here with some bread and fish. And Jesus, it means that young boy freely offered something that some adult even wouldn't do. Or some children will cry. That child offered his lunch. And they are integral part of the membership of the church. Now listen to me carefully. The church is not a community of adults, please. The church is not just a community of adults. This is a mistake many people are making. We see, and heads of churches, regional heads, your case, chairman, apostles. For some people, because the children don't pay tithe, they don't give offering, they don't support mission, they don't see them as integral part. They are noise makers. Push them somewhere. So for some people, the church is a community of adults. If you think like this way, you are totally wrong. The church is a community of adults, youth, children, elderly, disabled. There's space for everybody, and there must be space. I'm saying this because you can have church leaders, your case, apostles and others, who will be in an area, or pastors, 2, 3, 4 years, they will never visit the children ministry. No, wait. It's not only your church. Wait. Look. I serve, we call it General Youth Secretary. You are the director. I was in charge of Presby, youth, and students, the whole country, at our head office. And so, this policy thing, I have done that for Presbyterian Church of Ghana. They know. If you ask anybody, they know that I have, and that is the educational ministry. And I don't know your church. You have forced yourself to cry. I was not going to talk about Pentecost. I was going to talk about my own church. But, Prof, I can get a minister in the station. If that story is your story, fine. But I have served what do you call area head. I was in charge of Presby Church, Ashanti region. When you come to Kumasi, they have Asokwa Kwada. So I was in charge of Ashanti region, even up to Sevshi or Sekwejo Krom, all that under me. And I had about 100 and something. You can get a pastor you place in a station, and not 4 years, that pastor will never visit a children's service to see what they are doing. And presbytery chairperson, your area has, can go around visiting, and they will not even pray. They won't even pray for the children. Because for such people, the church is adults. They are not here. But when you go, help them to understand that the church is not a community of adults. Okay. I said I'm talking about my own church, so I'm not talking about your church. Let's move on. Please, at this stage, bring the slides. Like all sinners, we are still discussing theology of children ministry. Like all sinners, children can be accepted, forgiven, converted, and transformed. When you are into this area, you are not dealing with a bunch of noise makers, but you are dealing with people who are like all of us sinners. They can be accepted by God, they can be forgiven, they can be converted, transformed. They can be targets of the enemy also. Children. We see when we talk about spiritual warfare, we think about ourselves, pastors, but children can equally be targets of the enemy. If you want to understand, and they can be misused and abused. You remember the story of Moses. When he was born, the king wanted to kill him. Moses was a target of Pharaoh to kill innocent child who didn't understand this. Let my people go. That Israel was crying for. He was a little boy that was coming to lead Israel out of slavery. But at that tender age, the king wanted to kill him. You remember that of Jesus, that they had to. He became a refugee in Africa. You know. And children can be abused. You remember that girl who danced before a king and his guests. And then the father made a request. Ask whatever you want. It shall be given. Then the mother of that girl, go and tell your daddy, the king. You remember that request? That he should ask for what? Children can be abused. That girl was so innocent. That girl might not even been able to withstand that head, you know. But that was a mother abusing. Children can be abused by teachers, by drivers, by house helps, even security people who are supposed to protect them. Children can be, and you, the Sunday school teacher, worker, can equally abuse and misuse them. Those people did not attend this conference. The children have needs that must be met. And if those needs are not met in their socialization process, they become frustrated. Children have needs. One, they have emotional needs. If they are loved, they know they are loved. They cannot fight back. But if they are not needed, they know, Mommy, Daddy, you don't need me. Children have emotional needs. They have educational needs. Some of them are finding it difficult to study, even at the KG level. Some of them have health needs. The teachers among you, some of the children will think they are not good. Let me tell you, we had a child back to K University. The child was not doing well. You pick a conversation, excellent child. You ask her to do exams. And they repeated her, and spoiled child. One day the parents were having family devotion, and they were reading the Bible in turn. When it got to the turn of this child, a child, class 1 girl, you see, if Prof is reading, I'm sorry I didn't come with any book, and he does this, it's not surprising. Where is Asafo Boamie? But if a class 1 girl, you know, at a point, if I take this toy down here, I can't read. This is the position that my material book, Bible, must be. If you give this to me without spectacle, any support, I can read unless I do this. You understand what I'm saying? When I started reading like this, that some authority in my church also stop doing this kind of thing and go for spectacle. So all of you who read this way, you've crossed the red line, go for spectacle. But if a child, primary school child, reads this way, the child is sick. Elderly people, you are not sick. Beyond 40, if you need this, there's nothing wrong. Those of us who spend too much time behind computers, there's nothing wrong. But if a primary school child is reading Bible, and Sunday school teachers, be smart. You can help us. This child has been to Sunday school, being with professional teachers. They were not able to discover that the child had health need. The child had problem with the sight. And so during devotion, when they were reading and they answered, then she would do this and squeeze the eye. And say, well, I see nothing. I can't see anything. Quickly, they sent her to optometry. Optometry people. This child, does he have spectacles? Papa. Let me tell you, some of the children that you say wabon, they have health challenges. Parents are not aware. The teachers are not aware. They come to church, we are not aware. Some of the children should not stay at the back in class. They must sit in front. Teachers teach the way they were taught. Let me ask you a question. Some homes, when you cry, a child cries, they say, honey, stop. Stop. If you don't stop, they give you chocolate. The more you cry, they increase chocolate. Some home, when you start crying, they say, stop. I say, stop. If you don't stop, the third stop. Now, all of you who receive chocolate for stop, raise your hand. Growing up, crying, you receive chocolate, sweet for crap. Stop crying. If you don't, chocolate, raise your hand. The next one, I won't ask you, Prof, look at your people. The second one, I won't ask you. But those who receive the slap, a child may be innocent. Even in child upbringing, the child is innocent, but we still beat them. Because the thinking is, so if you put the chocolate and the slaps into marriage, when one is calling for chocolate, one is saying, oh yeah. Children have needs. If you are not able to diagnose it properly, you end up traumatizing. Who was sin? Why you be a nakachel? Some of us, we need forgiveness. Some of the children in our Sunday school are not, they feel you don't love them. Because we be say a question when to me and can. But few ban would be one no cancer bono. Have you checked where that child is coming from? Children have needs, health needs, but some of them is difficult even to describe. But they are being punished for that. They have security needs. You send driver to send them to school. On the way, mate, no way. In some countries, they give them drugs so that the child will not cry. Security. But when they come to church, we must be conscious of their security. They have spiritual needs. Their friend has lost the father, the mother, and you think they are children, they know nothing. They are asking, but so why did God allow my friend's parents to die? And they're asking, why God? If God is loving, why? They have spiritual questions that must be given answers. All these areas are big areas that in future, if you are interested, you can explore. But let's move on. They are the wealth. Now look at the words. They are not the same. Brother, bring this. The wealth, W-E-A-L-T-H, and wealth and health of families, church, nations. Your wealth, substance, quality. If Church of Pentecost the next 100 years will be a strong church, will be a healthy church, all these facilities here, in the next 100 years, how many of us will still be here? Beyond 100 years. If you are more than 20 years, you are saying you'll be 120. Now, Tikroma. So all these facilities, if maintenance will be proper, if we'll be able to keep this, the vision focus. It's the children we are talking about. They will determine the wealth, the health of this church. They are the hopes and foundations of future families, churches, and nations. But let us leave there. Now, who are the people we are calling children workers? Christian parents, number one. Christian parents. If you are talking about church workers, number one, it's not Sunday school teachers. Never give yourself impression. You are not the number one. The number one child worker must be those who brought that child to this life. Parents. If you are talking about Bible, those who must nurture the responsibility to raise children. Number one, parents. Two, pastors. And that's why I said earlier on, when we induct pastors, somebody must remind them that we are not inducting them for adult services, but we are inducting them for the total ministry, including children. And guest preachers, people we invite to our churches, they come whether we are doing convention, revival. As soon as you bring them in, all that they have is the adult. They forget that we have children. We won't visit them. Even prayer, we will not pray for them. I must know something. My time. There. Okay. Prof, I've read this. Just give me the same as he has given to me. Okay, so church elders, children workers, classroom teachers, chaplains, educational managers, school boards, school prefects, and the NGOs. But maybe that is where the meat is. Now, those of you here, so let's go to the transformative power of the child work. And I'm using story. Those of you here, if you have data, Google, the name is, so take this out. Robert Rakes. Google that, those who have data. Robert as Robert. Rakes as R-A-I-K-E-S. Then those of you here, Google the father of Sunday school. Father of Sunday school. Do it quickly. Are you getting something? Now, I wish I had time to do this. Let me do Robert Rakes. There's a man called Robert Rakes. If you Google father of Sunday school, he will give you Robert Rakes. If you Google Robert Rakes, it tells you he's a father of Sunday school. That thing happened in 17th and 18th century when Europe was having what we call industrial revolution. And you can read it, so let me just sum up. I wanted to tell this story in detail. At this time, Europe did not have laws, labor, child, security like you've given to us. And so children were working in the plantations in Europe. And American children, Europe, Britain, these children were like filthy, dangerous. But there's a man called Robert Rakes. He was a philanthropist, a Christian leader, and then he was into a newspaper publication. Now he rented a place, and every Sunday he would gather the children, pay people to teach them, and he was teaching them how to read, because the thinking is if they're able to read, they will read the Bible. They were talking about morals and religious instruction. Now, the only qualification for people to enter into Robert Rake's Sunday School was washing of face. Wash your face, comb your hair. And at the end of the service, he will give every child coin, money, and food, and pay the teachers. At a point, in fact, some pastors describe what he was doing as a work of the devil. And he suffered bankruptcy. He lost everything. That's November 1783. And people were saying that, we told you so, that these children are good for nothing. And so he published the amount of money he has spent on the children. And the queen, the then Queen of England, read the report. At that time, the churches in Europe had nothing like what we are calling Sunday school today. They didn't. But when Queen of England read the sacrifice Robert Rake had made, she identified with it and decided to fund it because the man had lost everything. He died 1811. And at the time Robert Rakes died, he had 400,000 children in his Sunday school. So in Christian history, all of us in this room, our father, if you are a Sunday school worker, the father of Sunday school is Robert Rakes. Google it. Now, what am I trying to say? We are talking about, there's another man, Bushnell, let me skip it. If you are talking about Robert Rakes, it's sacrifice, it's service, seeing hope in children. What other people didn't see, he saw it and spent everything. That is how the formalized Sunday school like we have today started. Let me conclude. Painfully though. That moving towards the transformative power of the child worker. How do we do it? Because we must learn from Robert Rakes the sacrifice he made, the services he provided. If you are into this ministry, and that was what I was going to touch on, public theology, when even people don't have hope in the children, you as a child worker must see hope in that child and spend whatever you must spend, the sacrifices. But there are a few things I want to conclude with. If you want to bring that, what I mentioned earlier on, the midwifery side of ministry, the transformative power, but I didn't touch it, sound public theology, have sound children ministry theology, and have sound spiritual and moral foundation. And we must focus on the power of the gospel to transform. Always believe this, that the gospel has power to transform both adults and children. And like I keep saying, the drive for children's service or children ministry must remain service, sacrifice, the common good, and the glory of God. Listen, if you are a father, if Robert Rakes is your father, you do child or children ministry with or without payment. If they pay you, praise God. If you must do it voluntarily, go ahead. The thinking is you are in there for transformation. You are in there for delivery. You are in there to bring out something that is hidden in that child. That child needs, the church needs, and society definitely needs. Thank you very much and have a good day.